She handed me her dinner hour callbacks, cases she'd botched, before slipping out for self-care. When I confronted her at the water cooler, she laughed and said, "I'll do anything for a break." I didn't say a word. That was 8 nights ago. This morning, she walked in wearing yesterday's clothes, her eyes red-rimmed. "You want to make me do your work for you? Well, now you can't take your break. I have an incredibly lazy coworker. She's never been a hard worker, but within the last year, it's gotten bad. She could technically retire, but chooses not to, for whatever reason. Which, I wouldn't mind if you actually did your job. But not only will she never help the office, she doesn't even get her own damn work done. As you can probably tell, this woman annoys the hell out of me for a multitude of reasons. We have a system in our office where all customer questions go into the same queue. If it's an email, a voicemail, part of an online chat conversation with an employee in another department, it goes into this queue. For whatever reason, anytime my coworker encounters a question that will take more than about 10 seconds to answer, she assigns it to me. Which, yes, I am very knowledgeable about our department. However, this woman has worked here 3 times as long as I have, and should know these things herself. Today, she assigns me a question, and as soon as I read it, I have no idea why she assigned it to me, because she should have assigned it to my boss and/or talked to my boss about it. As mentioned, I assign it to my boss and then go and tell her about it. During the beginning of our conversation, I overheard said coworker on the phone ordering food for lunch. Usually she hangs up the phone, waits about 5 minutes, and then heads over to pick up the food. Well, I'm still in my boss's office talking about this question. I should probably mention, my manager loves to talk, and while I'm usually trying to slowly back out of her office to end a conversation, this time, I take a seat and proceed to actively engage. So, the minutes are ticking by, and my coworker can't take her break because someone always needs to be office, and obviously I'm unavailable. At one point, I kind of tilt the chair so I can see her out of the corner of my eye, and I can tell she's just itching to run out of here, but she can't leave. What should have been, at most, a 5-minute conversation turns into a 20-minute conversation. Then I added a little more revenge because as soon as I left my manager's office, I ran out of our office to use the restroom, just to delay her break even further. I can't tell you how satisfied I feel right now. By the time I got back, Karen was fuming. She grabbed her purse and practically ran out the door, but her food had been sitting there for over half an hour. Small victory, but it felt good. The next day, I came in determined to set some boundaries. I'd talked to Sarah, and she agreed that the work distribution needed to be more equitable. But when I got to my desk, I found 5 new assignments from Karen already waiting for me. She must have come in early for once just to dump her work. I marched over to her desk. "I'm not doing these," I said, trying to keep my voice down. "These are basic questions you can handle yourself." Karen looked up at me with this fake, confused expression. "But you're so much better at these than I am," she said sweetly. "I thought I was helping by giving you the ones you're good at." I wasn't buying it. "That's not how our team works, and you know it. I'm reassigning these back to you." She shrugged and went back to her phone. I returned to my desk and sent all 5 assignments back to her. Within minutes, they were back in my queue. This was getting ridiculous. I decided to try a different approach. Every time she assigned me something, I'd walk over and ask her to explain exactly why she couldn't handle it, in front of everyone, loudly. "Hey Karen," I said, standing by her desk with my notepad, "can you explain why you can't handle this basic policy renewal question? I want to understand what part is confusing you so I can help you learn." Her face turned slightly red as other coworkers looked over. "I'm just very busy right now," she muttered. "Busy with what?" I asked innocently, glancing pointedly at her phone where she'd been scrolling through Facebook. "I want to make sure I understand your priorities so I can help." This went on for a few days. Each time she'd assign me something, I'd make a big show of trying to help her learn how to do it herself. It was passive-aggressive, sure, but it started working. The number of assignments she sent my way decreased, but then she changed tactics. Instead of assigning things directly to me, she started marking complex inquiries as completed without actually resolving them. Customers would call back angry that their issues weren't addressed, and since Karen had marked them complete, there was no record of her involvement. The callbacks would go to whoever was available, often me. I started documenting everything. Every callback where the customer mentioned their previous inquiry had been inadequately handled, I made notes. I checked the history, and sure enough, most had been resolved by Karen with minimal notes. After collecting evidence for a week, I scheduled another meeting with Sarah. This time, I came prepared with data, dates, times, case numbers, and patterns, showing how Karen's completed cases were generating twice as many callbacks as anyone else's. Sarah was concerned. "This affects our department metrics," she said, frowning at my spreadsheet. "And more importantly, it's creating a poor experience for our customers." She promised to address it with Karen directly. I felt vindicated, but also nervous. Karen had been with the company for decades and had friends in management. I was relatively new and didn't want to be labeled a troublemaker. The next morning, Sarah called a team meeting. She didn't single anyone out, but she made it clear that our performance metrics were being closely monitored, including callback rates and case resolution quality. She introduced a new peer review process where randomly selected cases would be reviewed by another team member for quality assurance. Karen shot me a look that could have frozen hell. She knew exactly what had happened and who was behind it. I tried to keep my expression neutral, but But inside, I was both satisfied and anxious about potential retaliation. I didn't have to wait long. That afternoon, I returned from a quick bathroom break to find someone had spilled coffee all over my desk, soaking some important paperwork I'd been working on. No one had seen anything, of course. I couldn't prove it was Karen, but the timing was suspicious. The next day, I discovered all my pens were missing. The day after that, my computer had mysteriously been logged out and required an IT reset. Small things, petty things, but annoying nonetheless. Two could play at that game. I started bringing my own coffee mug and taking it with me whenever I left my desk. I locked my computer even if I was just stepping away for a moment. And I made sure to be extra friendly with everyone else in the office, building allies. I also started documenting everything Karen did. And I mean everything. I kept a small notebook in my desk drawer where I'd jot down times, dates, and descriptions of her little accidents and sabotage attempts. Maybe it was overkill, but after the coffee spill incident, I wasn't taking any chances. Plus, it felt good to have evidence if things escalated further. The petty war between us continued for about 2 weeks. She'd do something annoying, I'd find a way to counter it. She started taking extra long lunches, so I started keeping track and mentioning it casually to Sarah. "Oh, is Karen back yet? She's been gone for an hour and 20 minutes and I have a question about this case she half completed." One Monday morning, I came in to find my chair settings completely messed up. I'm pretty particular about my chair height and tilt because I have back issues. It took me 15 minutes to get it back to how I like it. Childish, right? But that was Karen's level. That same day, I noticed something concerning. Karen was being unusually nice to Reese, the new guy who'd started just a month ago. Reese was fresh out of college, eager to please, and still learning the ropes. I watched as Karen called him over to her desk, smiling sweetly and pointing at her screen. By lunchtime, Reese had 3 of Karen's complex cases in his queue. Great. She'd found a new victim. I waited until Karen left for lunch, then rolled my chair over to Reese's desk. "Hey, how's it going with those cases from Karen?" I asked casually. Reese looked stressed. "Honestly, I'm not sure what I'm doing. She said these were basic, but I can't even figure out where to start on this liability question." I sighed. "Let me see." I looked at his screen, and sure enough, Karen had dumped some of our most complex case types on him. "Reese, these aren't basic at all. These are some of the toughest cases we handle." His face fell. "Really? But she said they were good practice for beginners." "She's taking advantage of you," I said bluntly. "She does this, dumps her work on other people." I spent the next 20 minutes helping Reese understand how to approach the cases, but also encouraged him to push back. "Next time she tries to give you something, ask her to walk you through it first. Make it take longer for her than if she just did it herself." Reese seemed uncertain but nodded. "I just don't want to make waves, you know? I'm still on probation." I understood his hesitation. Being the new person is tough, and you don't want to be labeled difficult. But I also didn't want to see Karen crush another coworker's spirit. The next day, I noticed Karen hovering near Reese's desk again. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I saw her pointing at her screen, then his. Classic Karen move. I decided to intervene. I walked over with a file in my hand. "Hey Reese, got a second? I need your help with something." I made eye contact with Karen. "Unless you're in the middle of training him on something complex?" Karen's fake smile tightened. "Just showing him a simple process." "Great," I said cheerfully. "Then you won't mind if I borrow him for a few minutes for something actually related to his job duties?" Reese looked between us, clearly sensing the tension. Karen huffed and walked away. I didn't actually need Reese's help. I just wanted to break up whatever work dumping scheme Karen was cooking up. "Thanks," Reese said quietly once she was gone. She was trying to get me to handle all her escalated cases from yesterday. I shook my head. Classic. "Listen, don't let her push you around. You've got enough on your plate learning the basics." Over the next few days, I noticed Reese started using some of the tactics I'd suggested. When Karen would try to dump work on him, he'd ask lots of questions, making the process of explaining take forever. Eventually, she seemed to give up on him as an easy target and went back to trying to dump things on me, but I wasn't having it anymore. Each time she assigned me something inappropriate, I'd immediately reassign it back with a note. "This falls under your expertise area per department guidelines." Sometimes I'd copy Sarah on the reassignment just to make a point. One Wednesday morning, things came to a head. I arrived to find 15 cases reassigned to me overnight. 15. All from Karen, all complex, all clearly her responsibility. I was fuming. This wasn't just lazy anymore. It was deliberately malicious. I marched straight to Sarah's office, but she wasn't in yet. Fine. I'd handle this myself first. I went to Karen's desk, where she was calmly sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone. 15 cases, Karen? Seriously? I kept my voice low but couldn't hide my anger. She looked up with fake innocence. "Oh, I thought you'd want those. They seemed right up your alley. They're all compliance and regulatory cases. They're literally your specialty, not mine." She shrugged. "Well, I'm swamped today. Big plans this weekend. Need to clear my desk." I leaned in closer. "I'm not doing them. I'm sending them all back. And I'm talking to Sarah about this. It's gone too far." Something flickered in her eyes. Annoyance, maybe even a hint of worry, but she quickly masked it. "Do what you need to do, honey. I'm sure Sarah will be very interested in how you're refusing to be a team player. I went back to my desk, blood boiling, and started methodically returning all 15 cases to her queue. Then I drafted an email to Sarah detailing the situation, attaching screenshots of the case histories showing Karen's reassignments. I hit send just as Sarah walked in. I immediately went to her office and asked if she had a minute. She looked at her computer, saw my email, and sighed. "Come in, close the door." We talked for nearly 30 minutes. I showed her my documentation of Karen's pattern of behavior, not just with me, but now with Reese too. Sarah seemed genuinely concerned. "This isn't just about workload," I explained. "It's affecting our customer service. Cases are being delayed, customers are getting frustrated, and now she's trying to take advantage of Reese before he even knows how things work around here." Sarah nodded slowly. "I appreciate you bringing this to my attention with such detailed documentation. Let me handle it from here." I left feeling somewhat relieved but also anxious. Would Sarah actually do something, or would this be another slap on the wrist for Karen? I got my answer the next morning. Sarah called a department meeting first thing. Everyone gathered in the conference room, including Karen, who kept shooting me suspicious glances. Sarah didn't waste time. "I've noticed some concerning patterns in our workflow and case management," she began. "Effective immediately, we're implementing a new protocol for case reassignments." She explained that from now on, any case reassignment would require manager approval and a detailed explanation of why the reassignment was necessary. Additionally, she was implementing a new performance metric, tracking the number of reassignments each team member initiated. Karen's face went from smug to shocked to angry in the span of about 10 seconds. She knew exactly what this was about and who had prompted it. I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was doing a victory dance. "Furthermore," Sarah continued, "I'll be conducting one-on-one performance reviews with each of you over the next week to discuss individual workloads and expectations." After the meeting, Karen didn't speak to me at all. She sat at her desk, actually working for once, aggressively typing and clicking. I considered it a win. Sarah met with Karen that afternoon. I couldn't hear what was said, but Karen emerged from the office looking like she'd swallowed something sour. For the rest of the day, she actually handled her own cases. It was a miracle. I thought maybe things would improve after that, and they did, for about 3 days. Then Karen found a loophole in the new system. Instead of reassigning cases, she started marking complex ones as "requires additional information" and leaving them in the general queue for someone else to pick up. Technically, she wasn't reassigning them directly to anyone, so she wasn't breaking Sarah's new rule. I noticed this pattern quickly and started documenting it. I also made sure to alert Reese so he wouldn't unknowingly pick up these cases thinking they were legitimate needs more info situations. But Karen had another trick up her sleeve. The following week, she started coming to me with quick questions about cases. Seems innocent enough, right? Except she'd stand at my desk for 20 minutes, essentially making me walk her through the entire case resolution while she took notes. Then she'd go back to her desk and complete it, taking full credit for the work I'd just done. It was infuriating but clever. I couldn't complain about her asking for help. That would make me look uncooperative, but she was essentially still making me do her work, just in a different way. I needed a new strategy. After thinking about it over the weekend, I came up with a plan. The next time Karen came to me with a quick question, I was ready. "Hey, I have a question about this regulatory case," she said, hovering by my desk with her notepad. I smiled. "Sure, happy to help. Let's document this properly, though." I opened up our internal messaging system and started a new chat. "I'll walk you through it here so you have a reference for next time you get a similar case." Her smile faltered. "Oh, that's not necessary. I just need a quick answer." "No problem at all," I insisted. "This way you'll have it in writing. Plus, I'm copying Sarah since she mentioned wanting to track knowledge gaps in our last meeting." Karen's face went slightly pale. I hadn't actually discussed any knowledge gaps with Sarah, but Karen didn't know that. She quickly backpedaled. "Actually, I think I figured it out. Never mind." She retreated to her desk, and I noticed she completed the case herself within the hour. Small victory. I used this tactic every time she came to me for help. I'd immediately offer to document the entire process, copy Sarah, and create a training reference. Soon, her quick questions stopped altogether, but the war was far from over. Karen started taking more sick days, leaving the rest of us to cover her workload. When she was in the office, she'd do the absolute minimum, creating a backlog that inevitably someone else would have to handle. One particularly busy Monday, Karen called in sick. We were already short-staffed because 2 other team members were on vacation. The queue was piling up and everyone was stressed. I was handling twice my normal caseload, as was everyone else. Then, during my lunch break, I decided to grab a sandwich from the deli across the street. And who did I see sitting at a table, laughing with someone who looked like her daughter? Karen, perfectly healthy, enjoying lunch while the rest of us drowned in work. I was so angry I nearly confronted her right there, but I decided a different approach would be more effective. I discreetly took a photo with my phone, making sure to capture the date and time display on the deli's TV in the background. When I got back to the office, I forwarded the photo to Sarah with a brief, factual email. "FYI, saw Karen at Smith's Deli during lunch. Thought you should know since we're so short-staffed today." Sarah didn't respond to my email, But the next day, Karen was back at work, looking annoyed. Sarah stopped by my desk briefly and simply said, "Thanks for the information yesterday." I nodded, and that was that. The following week, Sarah announced a new attendance policy. Any sick days now required either a doctor's note or would be counted as unpaid time off. Karen looked livid but couldn't say anything without revealing she knew exactly why this policy was being implemented. For a while after that, things settled into an uneasy truce. Karen still tried to avoid work when possible, but her more blatant dumping tactics had been thwarted. I remained vigilant, documenting everything and making sure Reese didn't become her new target. Then came the annual performance reviews. In our company, these reviews determine raises and bonuses for the coming year. They're a big deal. We all knew they were coming up, and everyone was a little on edge. The week before reviews, I noticed Karen suddenly becoming more productive. She was handling her cases promptly, even taking on some complex ones without complaint. It was such an obvious ploy to look good for her review that it was almost comical. What wasn't comical was when I overheard her in the break room talking to James from accounting. I was around the corner getting water and didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I heard my name. "Been making my life miserable," Karen was saying, constantly undermining me, refusing to help with cases, even turning the new kid against me. James made some non-committal sound. "I've been here 20 years, Karen continued. "Never had problems until this one started stirring up trouble. Between you and me, I think Sarah's buying into it because they're both around the same age. It's age discrimination if you ask me." I nearly dropped my water bottle. She was painting me as the problem and playing the age discrimination card. That was low, even for Karen. I walked into the break room, making it obvious I'd heard them. "Interesting perspective, Karen. Is that what you're planning to say in your review?" She had the decency to look embarrassed at being caught, but quickly recovered. "Just having a private conversation, dear. Didn't realize you were spying." "Not spying. Getting water. But good to know how you're characterizing our working relationship to others." I filled my bottle and left, heart pounding. I was worried. What if Karen was spreading these narratives to other people? What if she said something similar to Sarah? Would it affect my review? I decided to be proactive. I requested a meeting with Sarah the next day, ostensibly to discuss some process improvements I'd been thinking about. But once in her office, I brought up what I'd overheard. "I want to be transparent," I said. "I overheard Karen telling James that I've been undermining her, and that you're only taking my side because we're closer in age. I'm concerned she's creating a false narrative ahead of reviews." Sarah looked troubled. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I can assure you that performance reviews are based on objective metrics and documented behaviors, not office gossip." I felt somewhat reassured, but still anxious. The next few days were tense. Karen was sickeningly sweet to Sarah whenever she was around, but would glare at me when Sarah wasn't looking. The day of my review finally came. I sat across from Sarah, nervous despite my confidence in my work performance. "Before we start," Sarah said, "I want to address something. I'm aware there's been ongoing tension between you and Karen." My heart sank. "Here it comes. What I want you to know," Sarah continued, "is that I've been monitoring the situation closely. The documentation you've provided, along with my own observations, has painted a clear picture. Karen's performance and behavior have been problematic, not yours." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "In fact," Sarah added, "your handling of the situation shows leadership qualities I value. Instead of letting the issues affect your work, you've maintained high performance while advocating for fair treatment and process improvements." My review went exceptionally well. I received praise for my case resolution metrics, customer satisfaction scores, and team contributions. Sarah even mentioned she was considering me for a senior position that would be opening up in the next few months. I left the meeting feeling vindicated and optimistic. Whatever Karen had tried to do hadn't worked. I didn't know how Karen's review went. Those are confidential, of course. But the day after, she was unusually quiet and seemed to be actually working diligently. I wondered what Sarah had said to her. A week later, Sarah called another team meeting. She announced that due to department restructuring, we would be splitting into specialized teams. Each person would focus on specific case types based on their strengths and experience. As she went through the new assignments, I realized what was happening. Karen was being assigned exclusively to handle basic, routine cases, the simple ones she'd always tried to cherry-pick anyway. But now, that's all she would be doing. No complex cases, no regulatory issues, nothing that required deep knowledge or problem-solving. Meanwhile, I was assigned to the complex case team, along with 2 other high performers. We would handle the challenging, interesting work that required critical thinking and expertise. Reese was placed on a training track that would rotate him through all teams to build his skills. It was brilliant. Sarah had found a way to limit Karen's ability to dump work while playing to everyone's actual strengths. Karen couldn't even complain. On paper, she was being assigned cases she could easily handle. The new structure was implemented the following Monday. Karen looked defeated as she worked through her queue of simple cases. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. The specialized team's approach worked wonderfully. Our department's metrics improved across all categories: case resolution time, customer satisfaction, callback rates. Sarah presented these improvements to upper management, earning praise for her leadership. About a month into the new system, something unexpected happened. Karen asked to speak with me privately. Wary but curious, I agreed to meet her in the small conference room during lunch. I know we've had our differences, she began, looking uncomfortable, but I wanted to clear the air. I waited, skeptical of whatever was coming next. The truth is, she continued, I've been struggling with some health issues that make it hard to concentrate on complex cases. I never said anything because I was afraid it would push me toward retirement before I'm financially ready. I wasn't sure whether to believe her. This could easily be another manipulation tactic. I'm not asking for sympathy, she said, seeming to read my doubt. Just understanding. The new team structure actually works better for me. I can handle the routine cases without the stress of the complex ones. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. She sighed. Because I'm tired of the tension, and because Sarah made it clear in my review that my behavior has been noticed and documented. I can either improve my attitude or start looking for another job. I nodded slowly, still not entirely convinced but willing to consider that there might be some truth to what she was saying. I can't promise we'll be friends, I told her honestly, but I'm willing to move forward professionally if you are. She seemed satisfied with that. We didn't exactly shake hands and skip back to our desks together, but the conversation marked a turning point. Over the next few weeks, the office atmosphere improved noticeably. Karen stuck to her assigned cases and actually completed them properly. She stopped trying to dump work on others and even occasionally offered to help when someone was overwhelmed. I remained cautious, documenting everything just in case this was a temporary change. But as weeks turned into months, it seemed like the new structure and whatever Sarah had said in Karen's review had actually made a difference. Reese thrived in his rotation program, quickly becoming one of our most versatile team members. He thanked me one day for helping him stand up for himself early on. If you hadn't warned me about the work dumping, I probably would have burned out in my first month, he admitted. Sarah called me into her office one afternoon about 3 months after the team restructuring. I have some news, she said. The senior specialist position we discussed in your review is officially opening up next month. I'd like you to apply. I was thrilled. The position came with a significant pay increase, more interesting work, and a path to management if I wanted it. There's something else, Sarah added. Karen gave notice yesterday. She's retiring at the end of the month. I was surprised. Really? I thought she needed to work longer. Apparently her financial situation changed. She mentioned something about her daughter helping out. Sarah shrugged. Regardless, we'll be having a small goodbye gathering on her last day. I'd appreciate if you could be there. I agreed, of course. Despite our history, I could be professional for a retirement celebration. Karen's last day arrived. We had cake in the conference room, and everyone shared polite anecdotes about working with her over the years. When it was my turn to say something, I kept it simple and truthful. Karen has certainly taught me a lot about persistence and standing up for myself in the workplace. A few people who knew our history hid smiles, but Karen just nodded, seeming to accept the backhanded compliment for what it was. As people were mingling after the formal part of the gathering, Karen approached me by the coffee machine. I know we've had our battles, she said quietly, but I want you to know I'm actually grateful. I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. No, really, she insisted. I was coasting, doing the minimum, making everyone else pick up my slack. It wasn't fair, and deep down I knew it. You were the first person in years to call me on it. I wasn't sure what to say. This seemed like a surprisingly genuine moment from someone who'd been my workplace nemesis for so long. The senior position is yours for the taking, she added. You've earned it. You're good at this job in ways I stopped being a long time ago. With that, she walked away to say goodbye to someone else, leaving me standing there with my coffee, processing her words. The following Monday felt strange without Karen. Her desk was empty, waiting for whoever would replace her. Sarah had already posted the job opening and was reviewing applications. I submitted my application for the senior specialist position that same day. 2 weeks later, after a formal interview process, I got the job. My new responsibilities included training new team members and helping develop process improvements. Ironically, the exact opposite of what Karen had done. In my new role, I made it a priority to create better onboarding materials and clearer guidelines about case handling and reassignment. I wanted to make sure no one else would have to go through what I did with Karen. One afternoon, about a month into my new position, Reese stopped by my desk. You know what's funny? He said. I was talking to James from accounting yesterday, and he mentioned that Karen's retirement party was the first time he'd seen her take responsibility for anything in years. I laughed. People can surprise you, I guess. True, Reese agreed, but some lessons stick with me, like documenting everything and not letting people dump their work on me. Thanks for that. As he walked away, I looked at Karen's old desk, now occupied by a friendly, hard-working new hire. The petty war that had consumed so much of my energy was over, and I'd come out ahead, not just with the promotion, but with the respect of my colleagues and the knowledge that standing up for myself had been the right move all along. I couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment as I settled into my new role. The senior specialist position came with its own challenges, but after dealing with Karen for so long, they seemed manageable by comparison. My desk was now in a slightly better location with a window view, which was a nice bonus. About 2 weeks after Karen's retirement, Sarah called me into her office. I figured it was for our regular check-in about my transition to the new role, but she had a strange expression on her face. "So," she said as I sat down, "I got a call from HR today." My stomach dropped. In my experience, unexpected calls from HR rarely bring good news. Apparently, Karen filed a complaint on her way out. She's claiming age discrimination and saying you created a hostile work environment. I nearly fell out of my chair. "What? Are you serious? After everything she put me through?" Sarah held up her hand. I know. Don't worry. I'm not concerned about the validity of her claims. I have all your documentation, plus my own observations, but we still need to respond to HR. I spent the next hour with Sarah, going through the timeline of events with Karen. We pulled up emails, case reassignments, and all the documentation I'd kept. Sarah seemed confident that Karen's complaint wouldn't go anywhere, but I left her office feeling anxious anyway. The next day, Reese caught me in the break room. "Hey, you okay? You seem stressed." I wasn't planning to spread office gossip, but Reese had been through some of the Karen drama with me, so I gave him a quick rundown of the situation. His eyes widened. "Wow, that's low, even for her." "Yeah, tell me about it." Just when I thought it was over, Reese thought for a moment. "You know, James mentioned something weird the other day. He said Karen was asking him about the company's settlement policies for workplace complaints before she left. That was interesting. It sounded like Karen might have been planning this move for a while. Maybe her sudden retirement wasn't so sudden after all. Maybe she thought she could squeeze some money out of the company on her way out." I relayed this information to Sarah, who thanked me and said she'd pass it along to HR. For the next week, I tried to focus on my work, but the situation with Karen kept nagging at me. What if HR took her side? What if all my hard work was undermined by her false accusations? Then on Friday afternoon, Sarah called me into her office again. This time, she was smiling. "Good news," she said. "HR has dismissed Karen's complaint. They reviewed all the documentation and found no evidence to support her claims. In fact, they were impressed with how thoroughly you documented everything." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "That's great. So it's really over now?" "Almost," Sarah said. "There's one more thing. HR wants to use your documentation methods as a model for the company. They're asking if you'd be willing to help develop a training module on proper workplace documentation." I couldn't believe it. Not only had my habit of documenting everything protected me from Karen's false accusations, but now it was being recognized as a best practice for the entire company. "Of course," I said. "I'd be happy to help with that." Over the next month, I worked with HR to develop the training module. It felt good to turn my defensive tactics against Karen into something positive that could help others. The module included templates for documenting workplace issues, guidelines for when to escalate problems, and examples of proper versus improper documentation. Meanwhile, my team was thriving under the new structure. We hired 2 new people to replace Karen and another person who had transferred to a different department. I was responsible for training them, and I made sure to emphasize the importance of teamwork and fair workload distribution from day one. One morning, I arrived at work to find an email from someone I didn't recognize. The name was familiar, though. It was Karen's daughter. My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. "I know you and my mother had your differences," the email began, "but I wanted to thank you. For years, she's been miserable at work but refused to retire because she was afraid of not having enough to live on. After her complaint was dismissed, she finally admitted to me that she'd been in the wrong. She's actually happier now, focusing on her garden and spending time with her grandkids. Sometimes people need a push to make changes they're afraid to make on their own." I read the email twice, not sure how to feel about it. On one hand, I was still angry about the false complaint. On the other hand, it was nice to know that Karen had found some peace in retirement. I decided not to respond to the email. Some chapters are better left closed. About 3 months after Karen's retirement, our department had its quarterly review with upper management. Sarah presented our metrics, which had improved dramatically since the team restructuring. Our case resolution time was down by 30%, customer satisfaction was up by 25%, and callback rates had decreased significantly. The VP of customer service was impressed. "What changed?" he asked Sarah. Sarah glanced at me before answering. "We implemented a specialized team structure that better utilizes each person's strengths, and we've improved our documentation and accountability processes." The VP nodded approvingly. "Well, whatever you're doing, it's working. Keep it up." After the meeting, Sarah pulled me aside. "You know, a lot of this success is because of you. Not just the documentation stuff, but standing up to Karen forced us to address issues that had been festering for years. I appreciated the recognition, but I also knew it wasn't just me. Thanks, but it's really been a team effort. Reese has been amazing with the new hires, and everyone stepped up." Sarah smiled. "True, but it started with you refusing to accept the status quo." That evening, I treated myself to dinner at my favorite restaurant to celebrate. As I sat there enjoying my meal, I reflected on how much had changed in just a few months. From being Karen's dumping ground to helping shape company policy, it was quite a journey. The next week brought another surprise. The VP of customer service announced he was creating a new position, Department Process Manager manager to help implement our successful methods across other customer service teams. The job posting went up on Monday, and Sarah immediately encouraged me to apply. "It's perfect for you," she insisted. "You already developed the documentation training with HR, and you understand the specialized team structure better than anyone." I was hesitant at first. It would mean leaving my team just as we were hitting our stride, but the opportunity was too good to pass up. I submitted my application on Wednesday. The interview process was intense, 3 rounds with increasingly senior managers, plus a presentation on how I would implement our department's improvements across the company. I prepared thoroughly, using all the documentation skills I'd honed dealing with Karen. 2 weeks later, I got the call. The job was mine. My team threw me a small celebration on my last day as senior specialist. Reese had ordered cupcakes, and everyone signed a card. "Don't forget us little people when you're a big shot," Reese joked. "As if I could," I replied. "You guys are the reason this all worked." My first day as department process manager was overwhelming. I had meetings scheduled back-to-back, people from other departments wanting to pick my brain, and a mountain of reports to review. But underneath the stress was a sense of satisfaction. This was what growth felt like. One of my first projects was to review the workflow in the billing support department, which was struggling with many of the same issues we'd had: uneven workload distribution, lack of accountability, and poor documentation. As I sat in on their team meeting, I couldn't help but notice they had their own version of Karen, an older guy named Thomas who seemed to spend more time talking about his fishing trips than actually working. After the meeting, their manager, Kevin, asked for my initial thoughts. "Well," I said carefully, "I noticed some potential workflow issues, and there seems to be some imbalance in workload distribution." Kevin sighed. "You mean Thomas?" "Yeah, he's been a challenge. Been here forever, knows just enough to be valuable, but does as little as possible. Sound familiar?" I laughed. "Actually, yes, very familiar." "Any advice?" Kevin asked. I thought about everything I'd learned from the Karen situation. Document everything, be specific about expectations, and create a structure that plays to everyone's strengths while still being fair. Over the next few months, I worked with Kevin to implement changes in his department similar to what we'd done in mine. We created specialized teams, improved documentation processes, and established clear accountability measures. Thomas initially resisted, but when faced with concrete performance expectations and documentation of his shortcomings, he eventually started pulling his weight. 6 months into my new role, I was asked to present our results at the company's annual leadership conference. Standing at the podium in front of executives and managers from across the company was nerve-wracking, but I focused on the data, improved metrics across multiple departments, increased employee satisfaction, and better customer outcomes. After my presentation, the CEO himself stopped by to congratulate me. "Impressive work," he said. "We're looking at implementing your methods company-wide." I couldn't help but think about how it all started, with me getting fed up with Karen dumping her work on me. Sometimes standing up for yourself leads to places you never expected. About a year after Karen's retirement, I ran into James from accounting at a company happy hour. After catching up for a bit, he mentioned that he'd seen Karen recently. "She's doing great," he said. "Joined some garden club, travels a bit. She actually mentioned you." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? What did she say?" James laughed. "She said you were the best thing that happened to her career, believe it or not. Said you forced her to face some hard truths about herself." I shook my head, smiling. "Well, that's not what I expected to hear." "People can surprise you," James said, raising his glass. "Here's to standing your ground." I clinked my glass against his, and to unexpected outcomes. The following Monday, I found a small package on my desk. Inside was a plant in a ceramic pot with a note. "Sometimes even the most stubborn weeds can turn into something beautiful with the right pressure. Thanks for the push. K." I placed the plant on my windowsill, a reminder that standing up for yourself isn't just about winning battles. Sometimes it's about creating change that benefits everyone, even the Karens of the world. 2 years after the whole Karen saga began, our company underwent a major reorganization. The CEO announced that customer service would become a priority focus, with increased resources and higher visibility within the company. As part of this shift, they created a new director of customer experience position. Sarah immediately encouraged me to apply. "You've already transformed multiple departments," she pointed out. "This is the natural next step." The competition was fierce. Candidates from across the company and even some external applicants. The interview process lasted nearly a month, with multiple rounds and a comprehensive presentation of my vision for customer experience. When I finally got the call offering me the position, I almost couldn't believe it. From dealing with Karen's work dumping to director in just over 2 years, it was a meteoric rise I never could have predicted. At my first all-hands meeting as director, I shared my journey with my new team, not to brag, but to illustrate an important point. "Sometimes the biggest challenges lead to the greatest opportunities," I told them. "If you'd told me 2 years ago that dealing with a difficult coworker would lead to this role, I would have laughed. But standing up for myself and documenting everything didn't just solve my immediate problem. It revealed systemic issues that needed addressing and gave me the tools to fix them." After the meeting, Reese, who was now a senior specialist himself, stopped by my new office. "Remember when you helped me avoid becoming Karen's new victim?" he asked. I had no idea that was just the beginning. I smiled, Neither did I. But that's the thing about standing up for yourself. You never know where it might lead. As I settled into my new role, I kept Karen's plant on my windowsill. It had grown considerably over the past year, much like my career. Every time I looked at it, I was reminded that sometimes the most annoying problems can lead to the most unexpected opportunities. And that documenting everything is always worth the effort.